Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Saturday, August 24th, 2019, an important anniversary. Hurricane Andrew, 27 years ago, if my math is correct. 27 years ago today, Category 5 into South Florida. You've probably seen a lot about this on social media if you follow weather at all. People talking about that today. And for me, it's also an anniversary that this time last year I was in Hawaii for Hurricane Lane. I was just thinking about that this morning, that, man, a year ago I was all the way out in Hawaii awaiting the effects from Lane, which turned out to be not too big of an impact out there, but you just never know. So that's why I went. When you have a Cat 5 hurricane aimed in the direction of the Hawaiian Islands, you go, because you just never know. And it was really mainly a rain event that I was interested in. It's very hard to hit Hawaii with strong hurricanes, but nevertheless, that's where I was a year ago. Today, I'm in my office monitoring stuff like Tropical Depression number 5 here. And if we go to the homepage of the Hurricane Center, you see it's quite busy out there. Even though we don't have any hurricanes on the map, there's plenty to discuss. TD5, 98L, and newly designated this morning, Invest area 90L. And remember, the numbering system 90 through 99 is the way that the Hurricane Center keeps up with these areas of investigation or areas of interest, and us in the weather world just refer to them as Invest 90L or 99L or whatever. It's just a way to keep up with what's what. So first, let's take a look at TD5. It is forecast to become a hurricane, which is curious because the 8 a.m. tropical weather outlook, when this was still an Invest, mentioned that as it entered the Caribbean Sea, that conditions would be less favorable. And yet, it is forecast to become a hurricane in here. So you folks in the islands, you don't need me to tell you, hopefully you know this already, you definitely need to keep an eye on this, because even though it is a small system in aerial extent, it could be coming through as a strengthening system, and that is important because it'll bring impacts, obviously. Now, I want to read this because this is important too. Why would the tropical weather outlook mention less favorable conditions, and then the first forecast here from forecaster Stewart indicate steady strengthening throughout, all the way up to 85 miles per hour? All right, I am no Stephen Hawking in terms of my genius abilities, but I know math enough that 35 to 40 to 45 all the way up to 85 is intensification, not weakening. Why? Why does the forecaster say this? Well, you can read that in this paragraph here, and that's why reading the discussion is so important, because it gives you an idea of why the forecaster is making the forecast that they are. And in this paragraph, Mr. Stewart mentions the small cyclone moving generally west, etc. The shear right now is kind of pushing against it from the east, but over the next 3 days that shear is forecast to drop, and so it would have a better chance to organize itself and not be pushed at from the east. And he says here that although the depression is expected to remain embedded in a fairly dry mid-level environment right there, the small overall circulation and the small radius of maximum winds, the low shear that's forecast, and of course the warm sea surface temperatures should allow for slow but steady intensification. So there's his rationale. And it is a blend of the statistical dynamical ships and LGEM models and the more robust Hurricane Weather Research Forecast, or HWRF, model. And we can see that right here. All right, there's two different camps. One camp, if you just disregard the HWRF up here, just forget that for a second. That's kind of an outlier once it gets past about 60 hours anyway. So looking at the two camps of intensity envelopes, there's one there that is steady, and then there's another one that's also steady. I should have said steady strengthening. And then another group that's no strengthening. And then on top of that, the fairly reliable but sometimes a little too aggressive HWRF model showing Category 2. So as a forecaster, what is he supposed to do? If you look at the overall intensity, consensus through there, roughly, on my yellow marking, annotation as it were. You can go down the middle, if you will, and okay, the consensus is generally intensification is steady, slow, up to Cat 1. That's a reasonable forecast, considering that this would be headed towards the islands, right, where people live, not to mention shipping interest throughout here, and so forth and so on. So keep an eye on this. I will be talking about it, obviously. National Hurricane Center is on top of it, and we will see what happens. Following the global models only. Well, what does the GFS say? What does the Euro say? Well, those are simulations of the atmosphere on a global scale. They're good, but they're not great. They're not regional hurricane-specific models like the GFDL, what now it's called the HMON, or the HWRF, or others. And so it's easy to get lost in all the models are saying this and that and the other. Again, sometimes you just look out the window, and in this case, look at the satellite imagery and the environment and see what's happening, and you have your guidance that can be helpful, and then that's what the discussion is for, is the forecaster makes their interpretation of it, and here you go. That's the end result. So we will watch this closely and see how it evolves. Anybody, there's the depression there, fairly small, and those small systems can go up or down in intensity fairly quickly. So Barbados and points north and south from there in the Windward Islands, all the way up here to Puerto Rico and the Greater Antilles region. You need to watch this. You really do. It's not just going to go away and just be gone, and so you will have sensible impacts of some kind through this area over the next several days. That much I can assure you. All right, Invest Area 98L. I had an email today. A woman asked me a very, very good question. Her name is Sydney. She wanted to know about, why does the circulation appear over Southwest Florida instead of on the East Coast? Well, great question. And this circulation, you can see there's definitely a surface low in here. And when I say surface, it's not like you can drive around in Fort Myers or Naples in Lee and Collier counties, respectively, and look around and go, oh, there's the low. There's a big L sitting over there. The low pressure area is roughly in here somewhere. I'll put a little L there, and you can see the counterclockwise turning of these low cumulus clouds. And that's where the surface low is located. It's weak, but it's there. Another area of lower pressure and convergence is sitting up here, probably in the mid-levels. It's got a little bit more energy with it, and eventually this should take over. But overall, it is a broad area of convergence and vorticity. A couple of competing areas, low pressure here, trying to form low pressure over here, but this is probably more in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And so the two are not what? What do I talk about a lot? They're not coupled. Okay, they haven't consummated the marriage, so to speak. They're not coupled. The energy over here is competing with the energy over here, and they remain separated. And we can see that, ladies and gentlemen, on the vorticity chart. See, it's all spread out. Some energy here, some energy here. So Sydney was correct in her observation. And it's a great question to ask. I hope this explains it a little better. And so what will happen is this will probably take over. Not sure what will happen with this low. Does it just kind of meander out here? I don't know. We'll see. That'll be an interesting thing to observe as we go forward. Now, Invest Area 90L over in the Northwest Gulf. Remember I told you this was coming over the last few days. Just looking out the window, so to speak, and in this metaphor, the window is satellite imagery or computer modeling. It showed a surge of moisture and some energy in the atmosphere, and again, I point to the vorticity signature. There it is, right there in the Northwest Gulf. This tracked all the way across as some energy meandered around, and there it is. Not very strong in terms of the overall punch that it has, low pressure and wind, etc., but nevertheless, let's just get rid of that so it doesn't keep confusing me. There is some pretty good upward motion down here over the Gulf, pretty good outflow, And this little area of vorticity is something that we're going to need and be able to track over the coming days, because I think it's going to come in, meander around, and then try to come back out over the Gulf later. And I'll show you why I think that in just a moment. Also, with 98L over here, look at this front draped across, and you can see that's probably the path that it'll take. Just pointing that out as I get ready to show you the GFS model. Now, to tropical depression number 5. This is from Tropical Tidbits. It skips around a little bit as Levi's programming catches up with the way the floater, it's zoomed in, we call that a floater image or series of images here, and so it's skipping around a little bit as this moves along. That's fine. The bottom line, you can definitely see the rotation with this system, no doubt about it. Good banding, as you can see at the very end of the loop here, and wow, really good outflow. That feathering of the clouds, kind of restricted because the wind is coming in just a hair too fast from the east here, kind of blowing everything off to the west. It's not allowing it to stack. It's kind of like just blowing on a candle hard enough to tilt that flame, but not snuff it out. Great analogy here. Way to go, Mark. That's a great analogy. It really is. So it's just enough to keep this thing from ramping up quickly, but not enough to kill it off. And that wind coming in from the east is kind of pushing some of that drier air that resides back here with it, and that's inhibiting development. But sea surface temperature is warm, as does the overall upper ocean heat content all along the path of this system. So again, you folks in the islands, be prepared. It's headed your way. That is the vorticity signature, a little bit more concentrated all along the rest of this energy out in the deep tropics. It won't surprise me if this becomes a hurricane. You could go either way. So we will be watching this one very closely because it could definitely have impacts for the islands. Now, let's take a look at the modeling. This is the GFS. This is the ECMWF, and we're going to compare the two. And I'm also going to compare that to the ECMWF from a previous run because I have a little bit of concern in terms of its consistency. So let's set the stage, if we will, here. This is the outline of the high pressure area, the Bermuda Azores High, the subtropical ridge, whatever you want to call it. And over here would be TD5 over in the numbers. This is the vorticity and the energy associated with 98L. This is the very loose energy associated with 90L up here. And now let's just use the slider and scroll through this and just kind of watch as things progress, including watch what's going on. Get my pointer back, or graphics annotation down here, over here, and over here. All right, so let's watch this as I move things through. That's about 60, 120 hours. Just kind of go back and forth there, rock it back and forth. So notice a couple of things right up through here. 98L, it kind of stays stretched out. Let's focus on that just for a moment. Kind of stays stretched out. See that? Yeah, you got that energy competing there with itself down along the peninsula, comes out over the ocean. Not very well organized overall. It tries to, but I mean, come on, man. That's like 72 hours out. Huge area of just general storminess. Even at 5,000 feet, the wind barbs in there are just, nothing. But did you also notice, as we go back to the beginning, watch over here, this little bit of energy. Whoops. I didn't mean to do a sounding. This little bit of energy that sprouts from 90L. It's a lot to watch here, folks. Watch how that comes across. There it is, right there. See it? Right there. If we go back and look at it, and it goes across down the peninsula, and at about 162 hours out, it's a week or so, back in towards New Orleans. We go backwards in time. See the evolution of that? So that'll be interesting to watch. That comes from 90L, which is sitting right now over in this area. So there's a lot of stuff going on for sure. But again, 98L, it's hard to say. What a weird pattern. Now, whoops, did it again. Let's focus on this guy down here, TD number 5. That comes into the islands there. In fact, it passes right over Barbados. Now, this has a fairly good signature, meteorologically speaking. That's just an adjective to describe what it looks like in the modeling. It's fairly well organized. That's a better way to put it. More scientific anyway. And then, bam, it just kind of weakens there. You see that? Kind of fragments. It goes from being circular, then it kind of fragments. You see a little piece break off right here, and there's the center of it, whatever, and it's just kind of like weird. See that? And it goes through the Greater Antilles and then whoosh, gets shredded. So before that, though, as it comes in from stage right across Barbados over the next 4 days, that's robust enough that I definitely would keep an eye on this if I am in Barbados and points north and west from there. Guadeloupe up towards Antigua, St. Bart's, etc., the U.S. British Virgin Islands. I'm not too concerned about it for those areas yet, unless it starts gaining more latitude. So that's the GFS. Now, the good thing about the GFS is we get this on Levi's site every 6 hours, and so you have a good frame rate, a bunch of animation frames to work with. The Euro, you only get every 24 hours. That's just the way it is on the publicly available guidance. But notice, on the Euro initial here, 12Z, same exact time that we're looking at on the GFS, spread out energy with 98L. There's 90L, and then over here again is TD5. Unfortunately, this goes every 24 hours. So if this is this morning, this is 24 hours out. Oh, look, isn't that interesting? Look at all the energy over here. No longer is it focusing it, and I bring that to your attention. This is 12Z Sunday. Look at what it was showing yesterday for 12Z, or roughly. This would be Sunday evening. Yesterday it was much more concentrated. It's not quite the same time frame, but you see, they're off by 12 hours, but the organization is what I'm pointing out. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. It's not real consistent. So I just wanted to point that out. That maybe the idea, I was pretty confident yesterday, of a hurricane forming out here is starting to fracture just a little bit. That it would be more loosely organized, kind of like a glorified nor'easter. GFS might have the better handle. Isn't this fascinating? I think it is. Even when you're confident about something and that confidence gets shaken, try to figure out why. And it's the way the models handle the bundling of the energy, etc. And there you go. The European, that's 24 hours out. What does the GFS show at 24 hours? There's both of them at the same time frame. GFS, Euro, very similar, large mass of energy overall, nothing really bundling like the Euro was suggesting yesterday, and it really bundles it up from yesterday. See that? Off to sea it goes. We'll get rid of that. All right, so what does it show for TD5? There it is right there, coming into stage right, and we go out to Monday morning, Tuesday morning, just north of Barbados, and then into the Northeast Caribbean Sea, and it does keep it intact for the most part, and that is good consistency between and agreement between it and the GFS for what it's worth. 96 hours. Let's forward the GFS to 96 hours. There we go. Back one. So the Euro is a little bit more solid than the GFS, and that gives me more confidence that a fairly stout system, could bring some wind impacts, would be present across the islands. So that's very helpful to see, that you don't have one model that's like, yeah, and the other one's like, not so much. If it's going to happen, you need to see consistency to help you be confident in what to prepare for. We're not cheering one model on. Yeah, go stronger model. You don't like to see divergence in the models. That's not good. So this agreement in general of the two models, except for this up here with 98L, that's quite a difference there. But down here with TD5, this helps give me confidence, and hopefully the Hurricane Center as well, in terms of what will happen with TD number 5. All right, so let's get rid of the telestration, go back to the euro, and that's 96 hours at 120. It's over the eastern part of the Dominican Republic there, just west of Puerto Rico, and then it kind of gets lost in the southeast Bahamas at day 6. And then day 7, a couple of interesting things. Energy in the Gulf, kind of like what the GFS was showing, even has that S shape to it. And then there's the energy with TD5, maybe some more stuff coming in, blah, 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 blah. It's a week out. Plenty of time to watch all of this. Ugh. So, no easy answers. At least we don't have a big hurricane barreling at anybody yet. That's the good news. That could change, though, especially with TD5. We need to watch that closely. It could ramp up fairly quickly, but at least the small size means it would have to pass real close to or over some of those islands, Barbados, etc., to have a direct impact. So we will watch for that over the next few days. All right, I'll be on top of it. I'll post here on YouTube these videos. They go on Patreon first, since those are the folks that are directly supporting what's happening. Of course, they reap the benefits of having first access. I also post blogs there and tweet that, and then that ends up on HurricaneTrack.com. Instead of writing and posting in 4 or 5 different places, I start with Patreon now under the Hurricane Track brand and branch out from there. I think that's what makes the most sense as of now. And then, of course, I will publish these on YouTube publicly after about 15 to 20 minutes once the crowdfunding folks see the videos first. It's just, they help to support this. They get to see it first. And we do have a lot to keep up with, that is for sure. So just trying to think. Anything else? Nope, I think that's about it. A lot to cover over the next few days, and I'll be on top of it, as will the National Hurricane Center, of course. And make sure as you follow along, folks, on social media, that you don't get lost in the noise that's out there, trends that seem like trends. If it's 5 to 6 hours, that's not a trend. 12 to 24 hours, yeah, that's more of a trend. So, the models are showing this the last few hours, or the cloud shots are showing this the last few hours. Half a day to a day, that's a much better litmus test, if you will, as to what could be happening with any of these systems. Just a little bit of advice there. All right, that is it from me for today. As always, I appreciate you tuning in from whatever device you happen to be doing so from. It's great to have you there on that side of the screen listening to me. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you some more tomorrow.